Welcome to another edition of the Hoop Scoop. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Well, mighty Joe, glad to see you on your feet. You know, we missed last week in part because it was cold as hell, but also by the weekend you were laid up with this. There's several nasty upper respiratory illnesses going around Lubbock. I'm sure wherever you're watching this from, same thing. But glad to see you on your feet, man.
Yeah, we'll see how long I can last. But yeah, I mean, hopefully the voice holds out, and I had a little bit of laryngitis here and there, but we'll manage.
Yeah, I've known probably like a dozen people like that from all age groups and everything. Man, laid up with this junk, including some of the Tech basketball players have had some stuff throughout the season and here recently. But speaking of Tech basketball, 69-61, the Red Raiders fell in a top 10 Big Monday matchup here at the USA to Houston. They were undermanned, of course. That was a big storyline. Chance McMillan and also Darian Williams were both out. Not to mention Yolaho, who's been out. But losing two starters, two core pieces, two guys who were here last year as well, which plays a role in terms of leadership and everything, and just what they bring to the court. Just forget all the other stuff. Just literally the minutes they play, the points they score, rebounds, assists, all those stuff. It is going to be a lot to overcome, my Joe.
Yeah, you overcame quite a bit with topping out in the first matchup and somehow miraculously won that. But expecting to catch lightning in a bottle like that twice in a row, even though you're at home, extremely difficult. I think you're probably losing Williams and McMillan is worse than just losing Toppin. Losing more minutes. Toppin is great. But that's two quality players instead of one. And just the minutes and the fact that you're having to play six guys basically the entire game against that rugged, physical team after a quick turnaround from a previous game. I mean, that's about as grueling as you can get in college basketball, and ultimately it was a little bit too much.
After winning 9 of 10, something like that, now that you mention it, Tech's lost 2 of 3. They lost by 3 at TCU, came back home, like you mentioned, a couple of days before the Houston game, and you crushed West Virginia. A very impressive performance. I'm not worried, even though they've lost 2 of 3. I'm curious to get your opinion. This still looks like a really good team. They just need to get healthy and be firing on all cylinders, of course, once March comes around.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the time the NCAA tournament occurs and Tech gets their seeding, whatever it may be, I think they're going to be a threat in that tournament. I really do. They have the potential to make a long run. I mean, maybe borderline Elite Eights to Final Four type of a club, if things work right. But, I mean, I do believe that there is peril in the remainder of the schedule.
Yeah.
It begins at Kansas, and, I mean, that goes without saying. You're playing at Kansas, I don't care what the situation is, how good you are, how down Kansas may be, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So that's a problem right there. Arizona State is a program that right now is kind of in disarray. I mean, guys are getting kicked off the team.
Yeah.
They're hurt. They're playing with, I mean, they're even more depleted than Texas Tech. But, I mean, you go on the road against a team that just maybe should have beaten you in Lubbock, man. That overtime game.
Double overtime.
Yeah. Chance McMillan with that follow-up. That was the difference.
Yes.
Keeping Tech's hopes alive and then ultimately prevailing. So, I mean, Tech should win that game, but it's not a gimme. In Colorado, the finale here in Lubbock, you think that's definitely a win, and it probably is. But Colorado is playing better now. They beat, I forget who it was, a really good team. May have been BYU or somebody like that in Boulder, and then gave Kansas a really tough battle there as well. I mean, so they're not going to just absolutely roll over. They've improved a lot lately. And so in Texas Tech, I mean, obviously the injuries are a situation, but I have to wonder a little bit, if we assume that Williams and McMillan, or at least one of those guys, could have played against Houston. All right, now with McMillan, I think he could have, because after West Virginia, McCaslin said, if this had been the last game of the season, McMillan would have played. All right? So you have a precedent right there of a coach having a player who is available and then choosing to sit him. All right. Now, if that was the case with Williams and McMillan against Houston, you understand why he's doing it. I wrote about that in the Jaeger shots.
Yes.
And you're trying to get guys healthy and rested for the NCAA tournament. Makes perfect sense. But I wonder if you're also potentially sending a little bit of an unintended signal to your team that maybe these games aren't that important, that we're willing to sit guys and run the risk of losing these games. And if the team sort of gets that vibe and internalizes it and says, well, we've done the hard work now.
Yeah.
We've done what the coach wants us to do up to this point, and now we can just kind of cruise, and still we'll be set up pretty well for the NCAA tournament, and we can make a run. No big deal. If that's the case, and admittedly it's a big if, but if that is the case, then you're not going to beat Kansas if you don't go in full bore, and you could be at a little bit of peril in those other two games as well. So I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I was a little confused from the post-game presser after that Houston game in terms of how it's determined whether somebody plays or not, to be honest. But that being said, whoever's healthy, whoever actually suits up, Tech does play Kansas in Lawrence, 1 p.m. Saturday. And this is a Kansas team that, they're not even in the top 25. So for Kansas, that's a big deal, of course. I don't remember what the streak was that was broken with them falling out of the top 25. But still a good team, still a really tough place to play, really, really special place to play. I think you pointed out before in 2018 was the only time Tech's won in Lawrence. So this could be, a big notch on the belt if they can win. No matter who suits up, what's going to be the key for Texas Tech to get out of Lawrence with a victory?
Well, ultimately, I think you've got to manage the fog is what it comes down to.
Manage the fog.
Manage the fog, because that place, when it gets rocking, it's just like the USA, and it can make all the difference in the world. They've been really, really good at home this year, even though as a team they haven't had a great season. They've been bad on the road, flat out bad.
Right.
But at home, they've lost twice. The first one was just like Texas Tech opened Big 12 play with a 1-point loss to UCF in a game they expected to win.
Right.
Kansas lost by 1 to West Virginia to open Big 12 play.
Okay.
And outside of that, they had a double overtime loss to Houston. And that's it. They beat everybody else.
Wow.
They have beaten a lot of good teams there. They beat Iowa State, I believe, by 17. And in their last game, destroyed Oklahoma State by 32. Oklahoma State, by the way, is beginning to play better. So, that's going to be the challenge. And you say, well, how do you manage this? I think the best way to do it is you got to prevent them from raining threes on you, because that's when it starts to get out of control.
Yeah.
When those threes start dropping like bombs, and I've seen it happen so many times, it just gets away from you.
Yeah.
The crowd goes absolutely ballistic. And, they don't have anybody quite like a Svi Mihailuk right now. He's the classic recent example of somebody who could just kill you with those threes. But they do have a couple of guys that can get it done. Zeke Mayo shoots a huge number of threes. He's hitting a pretty high percentage, 40%. I think limiting him, making sure he doesn't get off from three-point range has got to be the top priority on defense. And then they got one other guy named David Coit, who's also a very good three-point shooter. But, he's not as good as Mayo. But he is capable of heating up for maybe one half and knocking in 3 or 4 threes. You got to check him as well. He seems to do really well on like the transition, secondary transition, where he's a trailing three guy, pitch it back out before the defense gets set up, then knocks it down. So you got to be aware of that. And ultimately, if you don't let them go off from beyond the arc, the crowd probably is not going to be quite as big a factor, and maybe won't influence the game, and your chances are better. So, I think that would be my key there.
I'm not a big ref guy. Blame the ref guy. I get so tired. I get worn out with that. But playing in Kansas, the refs are a factor.
Yeah.
It was like playing UT in football in Austin.
Yeah.
It was very similar, or it is very similar. So that's something Tech would have to overcome as well. But this team has shown an ability to overcome adversity throughout the season. Not always be able to completely overcome and it result in a win, but play well, compete. And they have actually won some big games when they've had substantial adversity. So we'll see what happens Saturday. I'm looking forward to it for sure. Joe, man, great stuff from you as always. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.